On any given night in the United States, the wealthiest country in the world, close to 600,000 humans experience homelessness. In case that number is hard to conceptualize, perhaps this will help. It's just short of the population of Boston. Homelessness, ahead on Wide Angle. What you're about to see is the second half of my interview with activist James Shearer. We aired the first half last week. If you didn't get the opportunity to see it, I'd recommend you go to our website, acmi.tv/wideangle, to watch it. That said, I think this half holds up on its own. But we covered loads of important ground in show one. I hope you find our entire conversation informative and insightful.
The other part is housing first.
Right.
A lot of people think housing first and repatriation, they're not really the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Housing first is more for people that are never going to, and I don't like saying this, but it's the truth, that are never ever really going to be able to maintain housing, and that could be from addiction, mental health.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, so yeah, they need that place where they can go to with a guarantee that no matter what goes down, that they're going to be able to keep their housing. That will work if it's done right.
Yeah.
That's being put into place.
So that's really, housing first is an approach to dealing with homelessness that really is cutting out shelter, cutting out transitional housing. Yes?
Yeah.
It's going directly to, this is your place.
Yeah. And the only problem with it is that you can be accused, and they've been accused, and sometimes I think you can warehouse people.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like warehousing people. It's like, all right, you stick somebody in a 5x7 room, you think everything's okay. No, it's not okay.
Right.
There's a lot more.
Right. Well, and if I may, one of the other pieces of it, which at least on paper to me seemed like a good idea about the housing first approach, was it's housing first before requiring that somebody have a job, before they be, if they have a substance abuse issue, before they're sober. So let's not make housing contingent upon those things. Those might be simply things that people can't get yet, but they do need a place to stay. Yeah. So that seems to me a decent argument.
It is. I know that there's been, my argument toward housing first when it first came out is like, well, it's not going to work because there's just not enough, like you said, are you going to just put people in and not think about all the things, the other stuff?
Yeah.
You know, because if you do that, if you give them the substance abuse services and everything else, and they don't have to if they don't have to live by any of that, if they can just keep their place, you know, fine. But a lot of it doesn't work out. I was talking to a public official yesterday that sometimes they get people into housing. It takes 5, 6, 7, 8 tries to get them totally housed, with the fact that you don't give up on them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really tough. It's really tough when you're going against when you're going against a system that's already prejudiced against you because these are homeless people, so they're at risk. So who do you go for? Do you go for the safe college student that doesn't have any problems, or do you go to the person that's been out in the street for 15 years and you know there's going to be problems?
Sure.
So landlords usually say, well, you know what?
Sure.
So, and that's not on the city to force that. The state needs to force.
Right.
So there's plans in place, but I think it needs more work.
Yeah.
Will it be done by 2018? No.
Yeah.
No.
Sure.
And also, and the biggest thing, there's just not enough housing.
Yeah.
There just isn't enough.
No, it's
you can't build it fast
tough,
enough. Yeah.
Exceedingly tough market.
Yeah, you can't build it fast enough. And
actually, maybe that it strikes me as I say it, that's a key problem in how we conceptualize all of this. Yeah. Because if we conceptualize housing as a market issue, then inevitably there are going to be people, obviously, who can't afford that. They're priced out of the market, but they don't have the mobility necessarily to go to another market. Yeah.
No. And one of the bigger topics that came up yesterday was how people are being forced out of where they live. It's like, out of their community. It's like if you've lived, if I'm a Bostonian, I've been living in Boston all my life, and I can't afford the housing there. That means that I'm going to have to move to some god awful place and where I don't know anybody. Same thing for people coming out of the suburbs that come out of places like Arlington. They're not used to Boston. So you go into Boston and people say, well, it's the same thing. No, it's not. Boston's a pretty big city. It can be a pretty scary place if you haven't been there a long time. If you just commute there once in a while, yeah, whatever. But now you got to live there. Boston's a whole different animal once you got to live in it. So it's like, you've got that. There's that. There's the whole thing about people moving from the suburbs and leaving the suburbs because they can't get services there. But Boston has all, and the city has to deal with that too. And I'm not making excuses for the city or for anybody, but it's complicated. Sure. It's not one size fits all. It's not an easy problem to solve. Right. But it doesn't mean people aren't trying.
Of course. Good. Well, that much is reassuring. Let's talk about a plan that does seem to be getting some attention. That's substantially different from any plans I've heard of. Yeah. It's going on being worked on in Hawaii. It's under Senate Bill number 7. I gather the session is now out. It had been passed in the Senate. It didn't make it through the House. The senator who filed it, Josh Green, is committed to refiling it next session. The basic idea is he, in addition to being a state senator, is also a doctor. And he sees a number of people who are homeless come through the hospital emergency room. And so he thought, man, these people are getting a lot of care, and it could probably be, there's probably an end around to that care, which is providing housing for people, of course, right? So he said, let's empower doctors. Let's think of homelessness as a medical issue, a medical illness, and let's empower doctors to write a prescription for a house, effectively, and to be paid by Medicaid. Now, the medical part of it is, he is saying, and you know this, I know, but I'm saying for our viewers, the medical part of it is the average life expectancy for a person who is chronically homeless in Hawaii is 50 years, whereas the average life expectancy for somebody who is stably housed is 78. So it is certainly a medical issue. It bears on our health, and let's figure out, here's a solution to it. And he argues, of course, that it's, in the end run, it's less expensive than seeing these people as sort of rotating in and out of the hospital emergency room. Your thoughts about a bill like that, and if it would ever fly here?
I can tell you that, first of all, the argument is valid. I know more people that if they can't get into a shelter, they go into the emergency room. You can go to Boston City Hospital on any given night, and you'll see there are people in there that are homeless. Yeah. That's expensive. I don't think people realize how expensive that is. The other part is, do I think would a bill like that work here? I hope so. In fact, we do a lot of work with students from Suffolk University every year. And they this semester, what they did is they crafted, copied that same sort of bill. And they were able to talk to a senator about it, and they filed it last week. Right. Will it pass on first inspection? Probably not. Right. But I think it's an idea. Yeah. And one of the problems that I have is that we need to come up with ideas, fresh ones. Yeah. Let's stop reinventing the wheel. Let's build, let's build a shelter. That's always and come up with these, places like Hawaii. That's ahead of the curve. That's way ahead of the curve. They're trying to solve the problem. Right. Another thing, piece of legislation that I read about was out in L.A. County, where I think it's Measure H, and where the advocates and homeless organizations and homeless people sat down at a table and said, look, if we can charge a 25-cent tax, we can make billions of dollars to put toward housing, and it passed. So they're dickering over how to spend the money now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that places like Hawaii, I think those things like that, I think they absolutely will work. And the great thing about the medical part here in Boston is Boston has a place called Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. They already run a medical facility in Jamaica Plain, which is kind of similar to that, but not the prescription part. But they do a fantastic job of taking care of people medically. I've known, matter of fact, the person that founded Jim O'Connell, who's been all over the news. I know him for years. He's a saint. Guy's a saint. And I think that would be something that they would be able to handle. In fact, the students said that they would be the ones that would implement it, and I think it would work beautifully.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So some things percolating, some things moving
Yeah.
in what seems to be the right direction.
Yeah. What seems to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly, one of your missions has been over the past quarter century. Here we are already. Has been to affect media outlets and how they perceive homelessness and the issue, and so that perhaps a newspaper like yours is unnecessary, although that probably won't be the case, but less necessary perhaps as we advance. In addition, I gather, it's been to give a voice to those who tend to be on the margins in our society. Yeah, Spare Change News certainly fits that bill.
Yeah.
However, you've chosen another way, yes, and sought another way to give people who are homeless a voice and a platform. Yeah, and it's you've started a Facebook page. It's called Voices of Homelessness.
Yeah.
Of homeless.
Yeah.
Of
Homeless. Yeah.
Voices of Homeless. Can you tell us a bit about it?
A few years ago, we were celebrating, I think it was our 20th anniversary. And everybody was making merry and saying, yeah, great. And I was getting my shares of pats on the back. The following day, I'm happy, and I was going to catch the train, the subway, and I saw one of our vendors that I hadn't seen in a while, female. She had a shopping cart, and she was rambling incoherently, and she had lost her mother, and she had slowly but surely just, slid into dementia. And I was looking at her, and I asked her, and she didn't even recognize me. And there was an MBTA police officer that was there, well, MBTA inspector that was there, and he said, "Do you know her?" And I told him, I said, "Yeah, she used to be a Spare Change vendor." And as he's talking to me, he's moving closer to her, because he thinks she's going to jump off the platform. And he says, "She's there all the time. We'll call people to come get her. They'll come get her, take her away. 2 days later, she'll be right back down here." It's the same thing. I was like, wow. And as she's talking, as he's doing this and he's talking to me, I'm noticing that there are other people that are just staring at her. They're not, nobody's, it's like, oh, look at the woman, look at the crazy woman, and I started thinking, you know what? We haven't done enough. We haven't did our job. Because she shouldn't be out here like this, so we're not doing enough. The other thing that happened that made me think of this project was, this happened a couple of years before that. This guy named Michael was homeless, and Michael played an harmonica. That's how he survived. and he was playing a rendition of Yesterday on his harmonica, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. And I said, you know what, it's a shame. Nobody's ever going to hear this except the people that are in this station. So I figured that, you know, you put one and one together and you start to tell stories. Plus I'd seen this website called Invisible People, which basically tells the story of homeless people and I said, you know what, that's something we should be doing. So I came up with Voices. It hasn't got the traction that I wanted to yet, but it's an extension of Spare Change. It's a video version. Just, you know, here are the stories, here they're out there. I wish we'd had social media a long time ago, you know, because we could have taken advantage of that. But it's something that hopefully we can. I've said I want to bring homelessness right into your living room. I want you to see it, and I really want you to think. If that was your, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking about a campaign where you say, if this is your mother or father or brothers, you just pass them by and just act like they're not there.
We'd love to hear your feedback. Email us at wideangle@acmi.tv. For information about this episode or to view other Wide Angle episodes, visit us online at acmi.tv/wideangle.
In the midst of very busy lives, certainly well-intentioned, concerned, caring people, it's hard to attend to every event and every person who could use help. A sense of maybe outreach that people that you've been witness to, of people giving. Do you have stories like that to share? That, you know, sometimes I think what we need is to learn how to behave in that circumstance. We have no construct in our society that encourages, that teaches us how to engage with people who, you know, and it's like you've got to be careful. You don't know, their state of mind and so forth. A sense of stories of outreach that you've seen that seems perhaps to have made a difference for people, or for you as a witness.
Yeah, well, the closest one I can is the obvious one is the outpouring of love that people have for our paper. I know people that absolutely positively love our paper and get attached to it. I get an argument from people that come into the organization a lot of times about, well, why don't you put it online? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? We're not in the business to make money. And you know, what happens with people is the draw of the vendors. You know, they see these guys out there in rain, sleet, snow. We're more reliable than the post office, and get paid a lot less. They get attached to them. They like talking to them, hearing their stories, getting to know them. There was one vendor that we had recently who got accused of harassing somebody, and there was this outpouring from his customers that wrote letters and made phone calls, you know. And when vendors disappear for any length of time, people call us and say, what happened? One vendor, his name is Hamid, he works down in Central Square. He's been there for like ever, and he had some heart problems, and he disappeared, and nobody knew where he was. One of his customers not only called us to find out where he was at, but tracked him down to find out where he was at and what had happened to him, and found out because we didn't know. But you've got people like that. There are some people out there that have some really good hearts. I see people that walk by. What I say when people that see panhandlers, just don't ignore them. You know, step by them, smile at them, because sometimes if you smile at them, it makes more of their day than anything else. You know, be acknowledged, to be you know.
There's a human.
Yeah, there's a lot of that I see out there, and I see people. There's a lot of goodness in people. Sometimes I don't want to. I've seen people, and I've done it too, since I've seen people that will go somewhere and pass by somebody and they want to give them some money, but they don't say anything, so they walk all the way by. They scrunch up a $20 bill and come back and just drop it and then just keep going as quick as they can. 'Cause they don't want to, So it's and when I was actually out selling papers, I got that a lot. People come to me and put a bill in my hand and say, here you go, and it's there's a lot of goodness out there. It just has to be somehow brought together.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think that when you talk about homelessness, and people are trying to solve it, I think there's too much fracture. I think there's too many fractures between officials and state officials, city officials, and activists. There's this adversarial relationship instead of everybody's talking at each other but not to each other. And I think that would go a long way as well.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the media. If the media would do more than just homeless guy stabs man in street, film at 11. If they did a little bit more than that, well, wait a minute.
Right.
What about the important question
Right.
here?
What about the context?
Yeah, don't think about forget about your ratings for a moment. Think about tell that story instead of all these. They tell these pretty stories, puff pieces about a homeless person that made it, blah 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 blah. But they don't tell about the, the why are women homeless? Domestic violence is huge. They don't talk about you need to
Or the
talk
growing
about that.
community of LGBT
Yeah,
youth,
they don't. Yeah.
or
They don't talk about 40% of LGBT youth are homeless because of that.
Yeah.
And people, they don't talk about that. Right. So I think that there's some goodness out there, but it's got to be cultivated.
And for those who are attentive, those who are interested in this conversation and interested in finding out more about what's going on, a sense of resources that you feel would be helpful along those lines to direct viewers to, websites, organizations, and the like.
Yeah, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I can tell you, well, Spare Change, obviously, www.sparechangenews.net.
Okay.
We have a website. You can get information, you can read about the paper, stories, and we're building on the website where you can get to a point where if you want to know where a vendor is, you'll find out. So we're doing that. Okay. Mass Coalition for the Homeless. I know the people that work down there. I know most of them for years. They're great. They're great. They get a lot of criticism, but they do a lot of work.
Okay.
Pine Street Inn, which isn't my favorite place, but I gotta give credit where credit's due. They do a lot of good work.
Okay.
But places like that, look, places that have credibility, that actually are doing stuff, that are empowering people, that are trying to get people. Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, like I just told you about my friend Jim O'Connell. Right. They're a great organization. I can't say enough about them. And they also have there's Boston and there's a Cambridge Healthcare for the Homeless too. They're great. All these places are just like fabulous. Get to know them, and you can contact the city, Boston, and talk to them. So they're pretty good.
All right.
Yeah.
And I'll certainly add Housing Corporation of Arlington locally as an organization that is exceedingly helpful, I think, in creating affordable housing, as well as helping people in housing crises. James, is there anything that we haven't spoken of today that you think would be important to leave viewers with to have a good understanding of this issue?
I think just remember the homeless people are human, or people that they just happen to be homeless. They're not a class. They're not, they didn't come from outer space or anything like that. So, they're human beings. They're people. Remember that. Just I ask people, think about it. When you walk by somebody, whether they're elderly or young, just think for a minute. Just say, wait a minute.
Right.
I got a kid at home that's her age.
Yeah.
Or my mom. Or what if the nursing home didn't put my mother out? My mother's out here panhandling.
Sure.
Think about those things. And look at people as human beings, no matter where they're at in life. They were human, and also remember they had lives before that you'd be fascinated when you talk to some of these people, where they've come from, and just like, what?
Sure.
You know, you used to be who? You used to do what? And so how did you end up? And then you want to, then you get interested in their lives. Like, okay, so how did you end up from there to here?
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, that could be very easily.
Not a straight line.
Yeah.
And I suppose too, some of there, but by the grace of God go I. Yeah. Another one of the myths, yes, is that it won't happen to me.
Yeah, that was my myth.
Yeah.
And I got shown, yeah. Oh yeah. You know, so.
Right. Well, I thank you immensely for taking the time to join me today.
It's been good to be here.
I congratulate you for 25 years at Spare Change News. That's quite a milestone. I also I thank you for shifting your circumstance. Yeah, becoming homeless and using that as an opportunity, in a sense, yes, skillfully, to provide a light on the circumstance for other people in founding Spare Change. So I thank you for that as well, and I'm sure there's a large community doing the same thing. Yeah?
Some of them.
All right, that's fair. I thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. There are some who would argue that homelessness speaks volumes of those so afflicted, and is but a logical consequence of poor choices. But from my vantage, the countless lessons we learn and affronts we face across a lifetime make it impossible to meaningfully judge the predicaments of others. And as the lives we lead become ever more interconnected and globalized, so too do the lines between individual and collective responsibility blur. Better, it seems to me, that we find something we can agree upon, that we'd never want our mothers or fathers, our children, or be ourselves on the street with no welcome place to turn to or face to see. Homelessness has much to tell us, no doubt, but less about we as individuals, and much more about us as communities and a society in how we treat the most vulnerable amongst us. On behalf of James Shearer, I'm Peter Bermudez. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Wide Angle.